Hi, everyone at home too, at the Zoom meeting. Shall we put off the lights? Oh. Ooh. Okay, I'm gonna just start off because I have way too many slides. Let's see where we can end. Okay, so this is me. I come from the Netherlands, as already was told, and I met Fiona, my dear friend, and she's from Kenya, and we met each other here in the States. And when I met her, she had started a Leave Leaves Alone program. And I, at the time, was working for a professional pruning company. And we started talking about landscaping, and especially how landscaping is done in the United States. And that kept us busy until today. I mean, we haven't stopped talking about it. This presentation is going to be two parts. The first part is about how the landscaping came to be as it is here today. And the next one is how we can change the landscaping practices to become more sustainable. Before we start, I would love to, actually I know a lot of people, but I would love to ask, who of you uses a professional landscaping company? Sort of have. And I think most of you are familiar somewhat with native plants versus invasive plants. Am I correct? If this is new for you, just raise your hand. Okay. The first part, landscaping in Westchester, an historical perspective. So after the last ice age, the woodlands began to grow in the Northeast, and they were maintained by the Native Americans, but also by the apex predators that were here, the wolves, the pumas, the mountain lions, I'm saying it wrong, wolves, mountain lions, and lynx. And the beavers. The beavers were very important in shaping the landscape here. The diversity of the biodiversity in this area was tremendous. And it is thought that the Native Americans actually contributed to this diversity rather than taking away from it. These are some quotes of early explorers, people that reached the shores here from Europe, just to give you an impression how rich the landscape was. So these are quotes: the songbirds sang so loudly that the gathering had to be cancelled. I just try to imagine that. Wild turkeys and passenger pigeons would darken the sun. And the river was filled with so many fish that it seemed one could cross the river by walking over them. These things are unimaginable today, but that's how it was. When the settlers came here, they turned the eastern woodlands into colonial farmland. And today, what we celebrate is bucolic or picturesque. I think this is important to understand. Was actually a testimonial of a loss of a people and also the loss of the eastern woodlands. So within 400 years, the woodland has diminished with 90% in New York State. And also the marshes, there was a lot of marshland here. 60% of that was lost too. The rest was now farmland. This is one of the first photographs of Westchester, and you can see just how bare these slopes to the river are. And often what we celebrate as historical and valuable, these walls here, and Susan here in the audience can tell, are actually a sign of wood shortage. They were used to build fences like that, and the stones were taken out of the land by the farmers, but generally were thrown on heaps or sort of stacked away to the side. They were only built as proper walls after they didn't have enough wood anymore. Just to give you an idea how bare Westchester had become. At the Industrial Revolution, end of 19th century, the industrial farming left Westchester and became more industrial and went westwards. This is actually the last big factory we had, a Mailpack, a dairy farm. And again, you see how bare the landscape is. After the farmers left, and also as a sign of the wealth that was accumulated during the Industrial Revolution, uh, wealthy people came to Westchester to to build mansions. And they modeled their homes after historic English castles and country homes. And this was actually interesting for me. So when these landscapes were built around these mansions, they were maintained with sheep and cattle. And a lot of the farmers went westwards, but a lot of farmers stayed here in Westchester and became groundskeepers. At the same time in New York City, they started to build these parks. And this is Central Park. It was designed by Olmsted. Olmsted also designed this one. And this is what became sort of the blueprint for the American landscape. And somehow we can still recognize this front yard being the lawn, and to the sides there's some greenery, rather as a framework in a landscape. In 1902, we're still in the Industrial Revolution. This was the first gasoline operated lawnmower. At the same time that the wealthy sort of started populating Westchester, there was a lot of poverty in the city. And the Industrial Revolution also sort of attracted a lot of immigrants for jobs. And the conditions in where people lived were very unhealthy. So nobody's favorite landscape here. This is a slum or a Hooverville. So after the Second World War, we starting a complete new era. And this is the new Westchester. So they opened it up by building all these roadways and parkways, and then they started building all these urban areas. And people got their own houses, the hygiene they needed. And it came with the bonus of 70 to 150 hours of lawn care per year, because that's, folks, that's how long we spent on our lawn. And lawn became a culture. And it's actually interesting, when I looked it up, I saw that in the advertisements in the 50s, 60s, the advertisements was mostly directed to women. Women were supposed to do the lawn. And then sort of the boys came in, the neighborhood boy wanted to earn an extra nickel. And it was only in the 80s when landscaping companies became a very common thing in our yard. Interestingly enough, this landscaping culture is protected by law, and almost all towns and also the states in America have property maintenance rules that tell you how your lawn has to look. American pride. Oh, sorry. That's interesting because we so associate the lawn with an American culture, but lawns are nothing American. Typical American grasses are fibrous and clump forming, and they have these deep roots, and they're nothing like the turf grass that you see next to it. So we go back in time, and then we find the colonists, they need edible protein-rich turf grass for their livestock. The cows and the sheep they were raising couldn't live or couldn't produce enough on these American prairie grasses. So Kentucky bluegrass, perennial ryegrass, tall fescue, and creeping bentgrass, they were important. They came with the ships almost immediately with the colonists to build these farms. Now, the seeds were harvested in England and the Netherlands at that time. And if you look at on the top, I wrote a couple of things. Those are the circumstances in which these turfgrass do really, really well. So that's a moderate climate, lots of rain, grazing animals, fertile soil, situations wherein the grass self-seeds, and there is no leaf litter because the Netherlands and England are not forested habitat. Not ideal for the American continent. So let's have a look. Turf grass in its native habitat, well, the slide's a little awkward, but that's a cloud with rain, so plenty of rain, self-seeding, fertile soil, and no leaves. The colonists, they had the cattle that pooped on the fields that delivered the manure. They imported the seeds from overseas, and they didn't have trees because there weren't trees in Westchester, remember? But now that changed. A lot of trees have grown back, so a lot of people have trees on their property. So now we have to sort of find the same situation, but with different ways. So we have a water sprinkler, a gasoline mower, we have lawn grasses and seed, and we have turf builder and the gasoline leaf blower to get rid of the leaves. So this is the most horrific picture I have in my whole presentation, but please remember, lawn care in the United States, it's a $200 billion business and it's growing still fast. So our lawn care here in the States uses 33% of our drinking water. That's filtered clean water. While we have water shortages in a lot of areas in this country, this is still happening everywhere. The pesticides per square foot is 10 times more than what any farmer uses in the country. In fact, Westchester is the worst if it comes to pesticide per square foot of whole New York. Emission-wise, it's 5% of all United States emissions. And then the toxic particles are worse than those of the cars. And fertilizers per square foot, 3 to 4 times the rate used than what's used on farmland. So this looks sort of horrific, but we have to understand there's a huge industry behind this that really earns a lot of money by having us do this. Now, in the last 50 years, we already saw a lot of loss of wildlife and woodland, marshland. But in the last 50 years, that's since the 70s, we can still remember the time. Since then, 70% of our wildlife populations have disappeared. Okay, changing our lifestyle is not an option, it is a necessity. The good news, a sustainable landscape captures water, filters toxins, stores carbon, supports biodiversity, and it's truly American. That's why I love it so much here. So now the good news. Or maybe? Yeah, the good news is that we know how to do this. We can landscape sustainably. We need help with it, because especially because of the invasives, it's a lot of work. But we have a lot of workers. We just saw how big the industry is. We just need to have them change. We need another incentive. So what does a sustainable landscaper do? They understand the habitat. They understand whether somebody lives in woodland or marshland, or wetland, or a prairie, whatever, but they understand the landscape. They know what the invasives are, so they know what to pull. And I tell you, we have a list with almost 2,000 landscaping companies in Westchester. I wouldn't trust any of those companies to send them out and let them remove my invasives. I just don't think that's a good idea. They have no plant knowledge. We need people with plant knowledge. And this is already in Europe, this is normal. If you have a landscaper in Europe, you have somebody who's educated in horticulture. They know the plants. And here, if you have a license as a landscaper, the only thing is you pay $500 per year, and you don't need to know anything. A landscaper that works sustainably knows where to get native plants, knows how to divide them, and knows how to build a sustainable landscape. Deer management, that's the biggest problem here in Westchester at the moment. That's something that is sort of outside our, how would I say that? We need to do that. We tackle that on state level, or maybe even on a county level. The great thing from a sustainable landscape, if you get rid of your lawn, you don't need weekly visits. You can have somebody over for a day maybe every season. Change the whole dynamic. Okay, so that's my vision. And I think sort of this seems impossible, but impossible things have already happened. It's our biggest challenge. But no gasoline, no toxins, and a less lawn is really easy. And with the right plantings, it's not too hard to create a healthy wildlife population in your yard. So, how are we going to do this? The first thing we need to do is provide food sources. If you have no holes in your plants or in your leaves, you're not offering food. Now, many insects rely on single plant families or single species. For example, an aphid, this is something I only learned recently to my own shock. Aphid, it's not just an aphid that goes to plant. No, aphids have their specific plant. So there are just as many plant families as there are aphid species. And for example, this one, the bees. So bees and butterflies generally are not very picky when it comes to nectar and pollen, but when it is for their brood, for their offspring, they are. And for example, now we have our beautiful spring beauties flowering, and there's a bee around here that can only raise babies with the pollen of the spring beauty. So if you have no spring beauties, that bee, you won't have it either. So a familiar connection is between the monarch butterfly and the milkweed. I think most people are familiar with that. So if you have a milkweed plant, there are many more insects that live and can only live with milkweed and not with other plants. So big and small milkweed beetles, red milkweed beetle, swamp milkweed beetle. So, and then also the predators, for example, these wasps can only predate on this aphid. And this is not the aphid that we're seeing on the milkweed. That's this guy. That's the oleander aphid. It's an invasive. It's sort of, I have never seen this one actually. It's the same. So, wait. Okay, so milkweed is actually pretty toxic and has quite a few relationship with insects. If you go to goldenrod, it has more than 200 association with insects. And the oak is one of the biggest keystone species. So if you want to have a lot of species in your garden, plant an oak. So this is Dr. Tallamy's work. He did research and found that a chickadee needs about 6,000 to 9,000 caterpillars to raise a brood. Now, if I go to my garden and I do observation with my iNaturalist, and I'm spending a few hours, I might encounter 1 or 2 larvae at the most. I really can't imagine the amount the chickadee needs. And then we're talking about butterflies all the time and the caterpillars, but there are actually quite a few. I mean, they're not that numerous butterflies. And butterflies sometimes are even toxic, the caterpillars, especially the bright colored ones. This is what the birds depend on our moths. And moths are, where the numbers of moths are decreasing more than those of butterflies, but we don't see the moths. We are paying them no attention. Maybe, I don't know, this is something that people use to make understand the situation, that when you drove at night years ago, your screen, what do you call it? With your window shield, your window shield would become dirty. That's not happening anymore. Your window shield just stays clean. There are hardly any moths. And what is the biggest increasing financial gain in landscaping companies nowadays? It's lightning. It's Christmas decoration lights and spotlights that go up in the trees that they create a sort of a lightscape at night. Those are particularly harmful for the moths. They cannot navigate with all that light. Okay, the lawn. This is sort of an anti-habitat. If you don't want any life, this is what you need. Or maybe concrete. Well, concrete is not even toxic, but that one else. So a better lawn is a smaller lawn, sustainably managed without fertilizers or pesticides. So you can look this up. This is our website, but Cornell has this type of information. New York DC has this information. We know how to maintain lawns in an organic way. It's common knowledge. But, you know, the landscaping companies make money by selling you fertilizer and pesticides. There's no financial incentive per se to do things organically. So if you use a pesticide, you're losing your natural pest managers. So these 4 insects all eat ticks. If you spray your yard for ticks, whether it's an organic spray or a synthetic spray, you're killing the natural enemies of ticks. Pardon our weeds. No mow May. This is a difficult one. So a lot of are concerned about our environment. They are enthusiastic about this idea. It is an idea that comes from England. And just as in England and in the Netherlands, if you have a little opening in your lawn, it will grow back with turf grass because it's just very happy there. But here we have invasive flowers like dandelion, bugleweed. They're all pretty and the bees love them. So I would go ahead and just leave them flowering. But a lot of people start mowing after May. And what they have is the holes that the flowers have left behind. And now they have to start seeding. And so we're getting a lot of complaints about no mow May. If you want a beautiful turf grass, don't do mow May. Just mow regularly and keep and do the things that are advised by Cornell and the DC. But then, who cares? I think it's really about time to create a new curb appeal. One that doesn't tell us that we have to have a lush lawn, but one that, well, that appreciated other stuff. I actually put this photo in because it's an advertisement for a picnic. And I'm like, huh? And I thought, yeah, why not? Let's give each other a break. It's fine. Or mow less. This is Mindy's property. Yeah, this is just grass that is not mown or maybe mown twice, 3 times a year, sprinkled in some seeds. So you're actually looking at the violation. You can get a fine for this. New York State says you are not allowed to let your grass grow taller than 10 inches. I think the animals disagree with that law. The advantages of just having your grass grow are tremendous. I've seen, if you go into a lawn like that with your iPhone, you find so many little critters, so many more than you would see in a lawn. So people know, if animals know to find a habitat like this pretty quickly. Ground covers. If you don't have a lot of time to garden and you have a lot of invasive, ground covers are the way to go. So this is Pecker aura. It's very popular now because Pachysandra is actually having issues, sort of a blight. So people are like, oh, we need another type of ground cover. And this is perfect for it. It stays green in the winter and it also has the bonus of beautiful flowers in spring. It's golden groundsel, Pecker aura. I'll give you, for any questions, I will give you an email so you can ask me things later as well. There are actually quite a number of options. I'm surprised that we're not using more of our common plants as ground covers. We have ferns everywhere in the landscape. If you just grow them together, they become a beautiful carpet. Mosses, blue rook junipers is a native. Violets are another idea, but there are more. And the market for no-mow alternative turf grasses is growing fast as well. This is Pennsylvania grass. My tip, before you buy, get to know your landscape. It's always easy to just shop, but you might oversee a lot of beautiful stuff that you already have in the garden. So these are the grasses that I found on my property, and I even have more, but this is just an example. I can call them short of fast if I still know them. So there is a wood reed, there's hairgrass, there's love grass, there are a couple of sedges, wood rush, path rush, Indian grass, wild oats, purple top, blue stem. So these grasses were already growing in my property. So they're telling me something. They're telling me, oh, I'm actually quite happy here. Maybe we can be here with more of us. If you don't know whether you have a good plant or a bad plant, use an observation tool. iNaturalist is free and you're helping to create a global database with information. Picture this, I think is by far the best for plants. And then if you have an invasive, look up what to do. I mean, there's a lot of information online to help you with these questions. So if you have something good in your garden, don't hesitate to pull it up and divide. It's really, what I would say with 80, 90% of plants you can do this, especially now when it's wet and things are starting to grow. Just pull up, and you can, even a clump like this, you can, create 10 little things from it and then replant. And before you know it, you have like a nice ground cover. Or just buy plugs. There are now a lot of companies, native plant companies that sell these flats with little plugs. You can buy a drill piece, you put it on your drill, you make all these holes in the ground and you just throw them in. Soil and organic debris. So leaves and soil are incredibly important habitat. These are just some illustrations. That is a wood frog, a firefly larvae or nymph, a moth, and this is, I think this is the red banded hair streak. It's a beautiful butterfly that actually lays its egg in dead leaves. So if you don't have these dead leaves, you don't have this beautiful butterfly because its caterpillar depends on these dead leaves. Soft landings, this is a new term, but it means that please let your leaves under the trees where they fall from. So it becomes this skirt around the tree, and there's a lot of stuff in the tree, like, for example, this little weevil. It drills, it puts a little egg in the acorn, and it drops down, and then starts another sequence of his life on the ground. Same here, the Luna moth, beautiful butterfly. The butterfly of the caterpillar is in the leafage, creates a cocoon in the leafage, and that falls down. So as it doesn't fall soft, it might be harmed, and you're losing a beautiful Luna moth that's waiting to emerge right there. Soil, there's more terrestrial life, and that means compared to what I'm saying is wrong. Terrestrial life, ocean life. So there's even more life in the oceans, but when we are on land, there's more life under the soil than there is above. In a little teaspoon of soil, there's more microorganisms than humans on this planet. Little critters that, create all these phases of decomposition, and then at the end stadium, you had all these bacteria and fungi. Incredibly important for carbon storage, which we really need to tackle our climate change, is by using our soils to capture that carbon from the air and getting it to the soils. Especially when you have succession, you go from a field that grows the shrubs, and then you get the first trees, and then you get old growth woodland, especially when it's in the last succession form. You have incredibly rich fungal systems underneath these roots, and they capture a lot of carbon. And they're good for water storage too. Well, productive capacity, that's for when you are a farmer. Okay, if you want to kill the soil, go ahead. Kill your lungs too. and irritate your neighbors. I'm not even going to talk more about this. Mulch more leaves that are on the lawn. Again, I already explained to you, leaves don't go well together. So you need to do something with the leaves that are on the lawn. Either mow them or break them off, put them gently in some corner. Adopt a new aesthetic. Plant dead plants, dead seed heads, it's all habitat. And it's also food. In the dead seed heads are a lot of seeds that are part of the diet of birds that stay here in the winter. This is actually my meadow, and I really, really enjoy the activity of the birds there in winter. And it's pretty too if it's frozen or if there's snow. There's a different aesthetic to it every different week. Okay, so you hear, I don't know if you're on social media, but there are a lot of sort of memes, I think it's called, that tell you to wait after the earth warms up to 50 degrees and then it's safe to clean up. No, it's never safe to clean up. Insects are busy the whole growing season, and they are busy with a lot of dead materials. So we have a lot of wasps that create little, or bees that create nests in dead stems of flowers. No, what was that again? This is a moth that, that puts its eggs in seed heads, dead seed heads. And again here, wasp using for its disposal of, it's called disposal, ovipositor, for its eggs. And these are eggs of the lacewing, also on a dead plant head. Lacewings are incredibly important because they are ferocious aphid eaters. Planting beds. So just start planting bed. You can just remove the turf. Turf is not too deep, so if you put your shovel under it, it's pretty easy to remove. Seeds. I think Pound Ridge has a seed library. I don't know if it's here. And they do some activities to winter. I've actually learned winter seeding here in Pound Ridge. That is this. It means our native plants, often the seeds of native plants often need stratification time. That means that they need to cold and need a little bit of damage before they can really emerge in spring. So that's what you can do over the winter. There are plant swaps in this area you can enjoy. And there are actually, our nurseries in Westchester are increasingly selling native plants, and we have two places where they only sell native plants, Hilltop Hanover and Wild Gardens. And you can buy online too. It's just, I think it's nice to buy here. You can also just leave the grass and just put a newspaper on it and some mulch, and then just use containerized plants or plugs, make little holes in the paper and plop them in. So this is the same year. So actually all these plants are prairie plants. And so again, just like a turf grass, that's a landscape that does not coexist with trees. So mulch is not a natural element in a meadow. So these plants actually don't like mulch. They cannot spread if there's mulch. So you have to remove the mulch bit by bit so that they can expand. The mulch is there just to suppress the weeds that are underneath or the grass that's still underneath. So these plants need company. They don't need mulch. Mulch sort of isolates plants. What you want is sort of a chaos of plants, roots, ground covers, so that it becomes like a how do you call this, intertwined mess, because that's great for the soil and great for the plants too. Oh, huh? They're pretty. Meadows, my favorite subject. Okay, so there are all kinds of different meadows. We've already seen you can just let your grass grow and just mow it once or twice a year. You can sprinkle in some seeds, or you can really start from the beginning and use a lot of seeds or plugs and fill it in. This is a wet meadow, and that's a bit of a drier meadow. This is super important. How does nature create and maintain a meadow? They do it with grazing we already talked about, and with fire. How can we imitate this? We can imitate it by mowing and haying. If you don't mow and hay, you're not doing your meadow a pleasure. Okay. In fact, if you have a meadow here, it wants to turn woodland. Woodland is natural habitat here. But if you want to open space around your house, a meadow is really, really terrific. Also because it's deer proof. Deer don't damage a meadow. So that's also a good reason to have a meadow. Nobody does this, and we have to do this because we have too many nitrogen, too many nutrients in our soil. And if you let the mow material lay down, you are advancing rhizomatous plants, which mean the plants that have their roots spread underneath the leaf debris of the plant debris, and the self-seeding plants have no chance to propagate because the seeds will fall on a thick layer of dead plant material. You have to rake out your meadow every now and then. If you live upstate, you can now put your meadow on fire. I mean, there are now experiments where they do that, great benefits, but I don't think that's going to happen here in Westchester. So haying, we must. This is my meadow. Also, I've never removed the grass. I've just started with mowing and haying. And once I saw it sort of thin out, I took the opportunity to throw in seeds. And wherever I get a plant from somebody, I just plug it in there as well. This is with an empty canvas. This is a friend of mine. So scraping off all the greenery and raking in the seeds. Use a trusted plant source. I've made a lot of mistakes with the wrong seeds, especially with meadow mixes. It's something that you really want to be careful with because before you know it, you have something in your meadow and it's hard to get it out. So you cannot mulch a meadow. But if you have a lot of open areas and you're afraid that all the weeds will come in, a cover crop is an option. Those are plants that only grow a year. You plant them together with your native plants. They come up much sooner, but they crowd out the area for invasives, and they give the native plants that are small in there the chance to grow a rosette or grow somewhat so they can take over the next year. I'm not against herbicide either. If you really, really have a terribly invaded landscape, that's sometimes the only option. And the benefits of a healthy meadow really, really outweigh the concerns of the herbicide. This is a meadow from seed, first, second year. Yes, no worries about deer. Actually, the deer are in fact doing some grazing work, so it's to the benefit of your meadow. A universe. This is my friend Murray. He is out with his iNaturalist app all the time, and I think he found in his home yard almost 2,000 insect species. How many? 6,000? No, but not in his meadow. That's all over the area. Yeah. It's really addicting. Once you have a meadow, the thing is, a meadow makes noise. It even has some sort of movement. I mean, if you walk in and all these grasshoppers jump away, it gives you all kind of pleasures that you know are way beyond just the prettiness of it. Okay, so now we see a lot of these beautiful meadows. How do you call it? I forgot how they call. Piet Oudhoff, both of these photos. One is Detroit, the other I don't recall, but the High Line too. There's a huge project in Chicago. These are beautiful projects that look like meadows. They're not meadows. They are planted with container plants, bigger plants, And once you go over them with a mower, they're losing their intention. I mean, they were designed as a sort of as a painting, and once you move in there with a mower or with a cow, you change the whole composition. These are incredibly maintenance heavy. Beautiful too. Woodland, we're home now. This is the Mayanes River Gorge. I talked to you about woodland being only, what was it, 10%, 5% left in this state. The Mayanes River Gorge is the only piece of land that we have that's still original woods. And why? Because the farmers couldn't use it. It's too steep. So that's the only part of this whole area that's still slightly original. But they suffer from a lot of problems at Mayanes River. So they have a team that goes out, removes invasive stuff. So woodland is not easy. And this is why I love them, but they're suffering from their own population. And the problem is we have no regeneration. And it's especially bad in a time where we have these climate problems, because we really need these trees to create a healthy tree canopy to capture all this carbon. And we don't have it. We really don't have a healthy generation. This is something that is like a ticking time bomb. And if we have some undergrowth, it's invasive. This is behind my house. It's only bayberry. It's like, it goes on and on. Barberry, Japanese barberry. Okay, the second biggest threat in our woodland are the tree companies. I'm not kidding. I've seen in where I live, there are about 30 properties on a road. I think 12 properties have had a tree company clearing the woods, taking out all this valuable dead stuff, everything that's slightly crooked. What they leave is specimen trees, single trees, and then they create this new landscape of lawn because people don't want the invasive bags. Now, how do we do that? Well, what do they know? Grass seed. And now we have to blow it too, huh? To save the, so. Save a tree? No, we really need ecologists to go into our woods help. This is Morgantoe Preserve, Krista Munger. So this is a woodland project here in Pound Ridge. Yeah, just for example, save a tree. There's no tree in that car. There's fertilizer and pesticides. That's it. All these trucks of Save a Tree, all these trucks of tree companies, they're filled either with chainsaws, with pesticides, or with fertilizer. They have I don't know why they're not planting trees. Out with the bed. Pound Ridge Invasive Project, set up by Carolyn Sears. There are now groups. I think Pound Ridge is by far the first one to do this, but there are now groups in every town almost. People that go out and help to remove strangling vines from trees. It's a drop in a bucket. But it's satisfactory and good work. And then in with the good. This is the wild. What's it? Woodland restoration. Wild woodland. Help. Oh yeah, I always mean wild woods restoration. So they have people planting these plants at home. And once they emerge, they bring the flats together and then they plant them back in the woodlands. If you need materials and you are you don't have a super big wallet, because plant material is, I think, it's exceptionally expensive here in the States. There are subsidies because our state knows especially the value of good, healthy habitat for our drinking water. So the DEC, that's a Hudson Estuary Tree for Trips. DEC has subsidized trees for you. And the New York State of New York City watershed offers free visits. And also if you remove your invasive, they help you pay for that, not the whole bill, but a part of it. Okay, so if you do some restoration in your woodland, you need protection. These tubes are exceptionally effective, and you just buy a bulk of them. They're not too expensive. And fences, I've been very doubtful about fences because they're not helping in any way to reduce deer. But I have put up a fence now in my own yard, and it makes me cry. I see a green mat of plants. I've never seen it in the woods. It's just because they fenced it in. Even talking about it gives me the goosebumps. I've never seen it. So that's how a woodland floor should look. It should look green, especially in spring. It should flower with ephemerals. We've completely, we're not used to that anymore. So we're forgetting that's actually the normal. Okay, well, tackling the invasive is sort of where you begin if you have a woodland property. I want to say that I think Poundridge offers home visit. Fiona and I do that too. We love to come by your house, visit you, have a walk through with you in the garden. These are pictures of properties that we've been visiting, and there's a lot of possibilities, and you don't have to do it perfect. Wetlands and ponds. Our local wetlands here. That's how they look today, yeah, with all the skunk cabbage. They're essential habitat for many sensitive wildlife species. And actually, these wildlife species are the most vulnerable for our pesticides because they absorb all these toxins also through their skins. They're also one of the fastest disappearing wildlife species on this planet, the amphibians. And we need it for drinking water too. So I thought this was interesting because we are used to seeing these lakes in our landscape, but most water was like this in New York. The lakes are mostly man-made. This is what's it called? Trinidad. This is a pond in Pound Ridge, Trinity Pond. Am I correct? This is a card after it was just built. The problem is with the lakes, they suffer from our septic systems, fertilizer use, and there is too much leaf litter. These lakes actually are not how do you say this, a benefit to our landscape. So sometimes you see something that you think, oh, wow, maybe there is hope after all. This is Cranberry Lake. It's also artificial, but in a different way. It was a quarry for the Croton Lake aqueduct, whatever you call it. And beavers moved back. And if you have the time to look at it, it's incredibly beautiful with a huge variation of plants. That's an ecosystem engineer. Drought and flooding. Shallow roots and compacted soil. That happens when you mow, and especially if you have a big mower from a landscaping company over. This is causing flooding and pollution more and more because we have more extreme weather. We need those roots to the rescue. I had to alter this picture. I couldn't find a picture that didn't say native plants have deep roots. It's of course bullshit. We have native plants with beautiful small little roots like the ephemerals that only live for a very short while in spring. We have ground covers too that just, move their way around over the soil. And we have fucking big roots as well, especially in prairie plants. So we do have them use natives, but for example, Japanese knotweed have roots of more than 6 feet deep too. So it's not a native, non-native things. Manage storm water with a rain garden. This is becoming very popular. It's actually just using the deepest area of a property where the water sort of flows naturally and fill it with plants with good roots that can stand drought and can handle water. And that sort of start to function as a sponge. It sponges up the excessive water that's on your property. I found that Boundridge Garden Club actually does a rain garden. I don't know if there's anybody here from the garden club, but they're into this as well. Use plants to slow down the runoff of slopes. We have so many terrific native plants that you can plant. They're beautiful and they're also incredibly um, effective. I mean, don't put mulch on that. That will be washed away in no time. So create buffers around water bodies. I think in some areas this is mandated. You have to have an area of 5 feet or 6 feet that sort of slows the down the runoff, especially, if you have pesticides and fertilizers there, you really don't want that in the water. So this is a good buffer. But why stop with the buffer? Okay, you're not alone. When we started, Fiona and I did a lot of social media work, and I needed the pictures, and I couldn't get a picture of leaves or leaf whatever, all the good stuff I couldn't find. There were only a few books, and now there is so much. So go to bookstores, start reading about it, start somewhere. I think it's one thing that I wanted to mention. There's before you get sort of overwhelmed, there are 3 things that sort of um, 3 themes that you find in those books, and I think you need to find the one that speaks to you. So if you are concerned about climate change, this is one of my favorite books. So that's more about carbon storage and not using gasoline. And then you have the books that are more about ecology, if you really like plants and insects. And then this is another type of book which I find very interesting. So people started talking about novel ecosystems. Novel ecosystems is sort of the realization that no, we're not going back to our native ecosystems. There's just no way we can manage that. Too many things have changed. But what are we going to get in the future, and how can we create a landscape, a habitat in the future that still benefits us, that can help us with the problems that we have? And those books are very exciting. I mean, for example, we just come back from Amsterdam. Amsterdam is it's a stone city, but they're doing so many things on the level of leaving the weeds, planting wild stuff in playgrounds. And there was, first there was nothing. There was sea, and then there was a city, and now there are plants and bees and butterflies. They're all flying around there. So there are things that are possible. Look, this really makes me happy. So this is the names that I put on the Pollinator Pathway newsletter that I write. These are all organizations have told us in any way that they are supporting the Pollinator Pathway efforts. These are all groups in Westchester County that have exactly the same concerns like we do. And so I think that is incredibly comforting to know that we're not alone on this. I actually put in bold the ones that are here in Pound Ridge Invasive Club, Pound Ridge Invasive Project, Pound Ridge Garden Club, Land Conservancy, Pollinator Pathways. We have now new wild ones, Lower Hudson. The one who set it up lives in Pound Ridge. And we have a Bionutrient Food and Farming, Ellen Best, and who also lives in Pound Ridge. And we have Eli, I can't find him, Partners for Climate Action, Eli Arnau, also in Pound Ridge. I have a few, this was actually the end, but if you want to just a few examples of people who have done what we are talking about. This is the Sarah Stein garden. You can visit the garden. Sarah Stein wrote a book about it. Today, Ellen Best is living on this property. And she was one of the first people actually who started to really write about native plants. Joe Simonetti, another friend of mine. It's not flowering yet, but these are. This is a wetland meadow. Lots of cardinal flowers, and if you come there in spring, it's filled with hummingbirds. Leslie Needham, garden designer. Her garden is connected to the Mayanas River. You can visit her garden too. garden conservancy, and we have it on the garden tour as well. And this is a garden designed by Missy Fable, Bylane Farm. If you want to learn about farming, you can go there weekly and help Steve Ricker garden and learn from him as well. So that's just a few examples. I'm already there. I thought I had way too many slides, but now we can do questions, which I like even better. Do we have questions? No questions? I have a lot of questions. Yeah.
Thank you, that was fantastic. We're at the stage of dealing with invasives. So there's lots of invasives. Where do they want to go? Where can we put them? We don't want to compost them.
Oh,
And
you can just pile them up. I mean, yeah, there are a lot of people that are afraid that if you put an invasive somewhere, they will crawl back, if not in your garden and into your nightmare. No, generally, if you pile them up, they're not going anywhere. If they seed heads, like you have garlic mustard and you just harvest them when it's filled with seeds, I would put it in a compost bin or maybe even in a plastic bag, or bring them to the compost center or something like that. You just don't want the seeds to spread. The only thing for what I would make an exception, really, really, really treasured, is lesser celandine. It's the flower that comes up right now. It's a wetland flower. It creates a carpet of beautiful, fatty, glossy green leaves with yellow flowers. And there are little bulblets underneath, and they're absolutely a disaster. People who have them are, yeah, strangely enough, it's a plant that's really loved in the Netherlands. I spoke with my brother about this, and I said, how is it possible that a plant behaves so terribly somewhere else? And he said there's probably a nematode, some type of fungus in a native soil that's not here, and why it's not stopped. So that speaks to the idea of biocontrol, that we really have to learn to learn what keeps these invasives going from becoming so aggressive. What happens in their home country? What's holding them back? Yeah, garlic mustard is called Modest Hendrik in the Netherlands. But here's the thing, it's actually really interesting. So we're talking about garlic mustard. Does everybody know garlic mustard? It's one of the most prominent invasive that we have in our woodland, or it's actually a woodland edge plant. So it's a huge problem here. So again, my brother's an ecologist, and I say, it's such a problem here. How is that possible? And he says, you know what? It's becoming a problem here too. It's the nitrogen in our soil. So if you have emissions, when you burn gasoline, you get reactive nitrogen, which sort of acts the same as a fertilizer. And it's in the water, it comes in the soil, it's everywhere. And plants that love this nitrogen grow fast. They grow so fast that they outgrow and outcompete other plants. So we see problems that are not just because things are invasive, they're also here because we have other type of problems. Yeah. Yeah.
I just had a comment on the lesser celandine species. I had really good luck. So I set up test plots last year, and this year no lesser celandine came up, and I used 30% vinegar mixed with surfactant, and it worked really well. So if you do have lesser
So you have a
celandine-
test plot, you mean in your own ground?
Yes. Yeah. And that it did not come up this year. So
just wait a little bit.
Well, it's up all around the test plots.
No, that's not what I meant is that the bulblets might still, even if there's 3 or 4 alive, then it can sort of reconquer.
I don't know. I'm feeling pretty good about it.
Yeah. Yeah. So vinegar, I'm using that too. There's this conversation, should I use organic, non-organic? It's all bullshit, because we're talking about chemicals, whether they are in organic materials, that means that they're retrieved from nature sources, or whether they're made in the lab. Salt, vinegar, glyphosate, all these things are chemicals. And yeah, of course, vinegar is pretty safe for us. I use it to clean my paths and the terraces. yeah, it's pretty effective. But wait, lesser celandine is such a monster.
So, one experiment I'm doing this year is piling up um, fallen branches and some of the pruning outtakes and some invasives, not like a lot of taking burning bush and making a barrier around some of the in the wooded areas that are otherwise really trounced by deer. So, which can evidently jump high or long, but not both. So, hopefully,
Yeah, if you have that
is
many,
something
if you have
can
that
do
much
with some
debris.
invasives, right? That you can do with some of that debris is actually use it. So I read, I think I heard about that on one of the talks through
Yeah.
Bedford 2030.
Yeah, you can do that.
So
You
I'm
can
hopeful.
make barriers. You can also use it to grow, for example, pumpkins. If you create this Hoogland culture with all this stuff, you can actually grow on it as well. Yeah, they're all. I mean, they're all. And if you just leave it, it's fantastic habitat for a lot of
yeah.
animals too.
For us, we're trying it in the woods where, also that it's a little out of the way. So if it's ugly stuff, then it's out of the way. But still, we need
Yeah, let's not say
to
ugly
let
stuff,
trees
shall we?
grow. Hopefully, I mean, we do see where stuff is down, so much more comes up where it just keeps the deer away. So
Yeah.
I was a little confused by your haying of the meadow. I know about the cutting the meadow in order to maintain a meadow, but then you said to hay it afterwards. What do you mean by that? Do you mean
Let's see if I have a
lay-
picture still. I'm not sure. I don't think so. I can't really see. No, I don't have it. Okay, so if you have a roadside and you go over it with a mower, what they do here with a big, what you call it? What's the type of mower they use here with all the, it chops it, it mulches. No, it's not a mulching mower. It's the big things that use, Parks and Recreation Highway departments. It chops it off and, no, okay, it does, huh? Okay, so it chops it up and it leaves a layer of plant debris. So what we see along our roadside is mugwort, we see Japanese knotweed. These are all plants that really love to spread their roots and go under it. And it also creates a thick layer. So if there's a native plant that tries to get in there by the seed will never touch the soil because there's too much debris. So in order, and actually this, if you just do this along the roadside, we know that this is happening. In the Netherlands, they do it everywhere now. It's pretty astounding to see. If you mow it and you remove the debris, and you keep doing that, all of a sudden diversity comes up. Because you create more openness, you slow down the growth of stuff because you have removed the nitrogen, the growth slows down, so things get a more fair playground. If you have less fertilizer, you don't have the garlic mustards and all the stuff that really loves, all the cresses that really loves these nutrients, that throw themselves up and then sort of they don't allow anything else. But I have actually, if you're interested, if the Teody shit, I've been doing this with the mugwort. I've just been mowing it, removing it, mowing it, removing, and now all the nice stuff is coming in, all kind of flowers. Are they all native? No. But some are. Yes, there's now milkweed. There are goldenrods that I never planted there. They can go there because now there is soil available. They can reach it.
if I can ask another question. So, but what you're saying about soil being available does not hold if what's left there is leaf litter? What's left in an area?
Exactly, because we lose. That's the crazy thing. It's something that Americans do. They use mulch in order to weeds. So it's a weed deterrent, but it also deters all the other interesting stuff.
But if I leave leaves, which is what I've been doing. Because
Okay,
I
so
know
that's
you.
no, you're making a very good point. So think about what I'm saying. Plants that grow up in habitats without trees. Those are our prairie plants. That are the plants that need full sun. If you're under a tree, there's no full sun. But we have a lot of woodland plants, and those woodland plants are evolved with leaf litter. So we're talking about completely different habitat now. We're talking about plants that, for example, need ants to get their seeds into the ground and not a bee or a butterfly. So this really different habitat. And then we have the habitat that's sort of on the edge, woodland edge habitat. So for all these different habitats, that's what I mentioned with the landscapers we need to understand these different habitats that we have on the landscape and then find the plants that like living in those areas, that belong in those areas.
So questions that we often get are about tick and mosquito management in the area. And so I see a lot of the questions on like the Pound Ridge Working Moms group email chains. And I usually wait to see if anybody else chimes in because I feel like I'm usually the one to respond and be like, hold on before you start like just blanket spraying everything and like killing everything. But are there other resources that you would recommend pointing people to?
Yeah, we made a card. I don't know if you see them. We made special cards for them. So what is the reason we have ticks? What is the reason we have mosquitoes? And what is the reason they carry these diseases? It's a lack of biodiversity. So what are we doing when we add pesticides in the landscape? We're harming biodiversity. It's a circle, and I'm sometimes I'm afraid we won't be able to step out of that because there's so much financial incentive to keep selling these awful products. Yeah, just keep on talking about it. And also you can direct them. What we do is generally direct them to the Gary Institute. They have very good information on the website. They also have scientific research that shows that no, your chances on Lyme disease are not being reduced when you use pesticides. So there are really, really hard facts for that. Dennis, hi.
Hi, good to see you. What pesticides specifically, what pesticides are you referring to specifically that are being used?
Okay, so that's actually a terrific question. So with pesticides, we mean so many different things. So a herbicide is a pesticide too. So you have, for example, there are bacteria that impact mosquito larvae. Only mosquito larvae. So that's a great thing to use. You can attract mosquitoes and they lay their eggs and then the larvae are killed. So there are ways that are less intrusive and better to use. The other pesticides, you have different pyrethroids, neonicotinoids. You have a lot of insecticides that kill insects. Sometimes it's soft-bodied, hard-bodied, different. But a spider is from the same family as a tick. The spider also eats a tick. So if you put something on your lawn that kills the ticks, it definitely kills the spider too. There's no way around it. So there is also a class that's called deterrents. Deterrents are smells, garlic, mint. Those are used to, you don't get a yellow flag into your lawn, but it gives you some protection.
Yeah, my question more is, you seem to be referring to the fact that a lot of pesticides are being used in Westchester County or in
Yeah.
our area. I don't see that being the case.
You can just look it up. That's all the sales are recorded. So you can just exactly look up what's been sold where.
Where would I find that information?
That's on Cornell. I can forward it to you. It's Cornell University and the DEC.
And specifically, what pesticides do you find are being used in high volumes in our areas? What I'm trying
Yes.
to get to.
Well, those are mainly I think now you might see a shift from the synthetic pesticides to organic pesticides. But again, there are companies that say they are organic because they use natural ingredients, and then they refer to things that are in chrysanthemums, which is actually also synthetically derived and is very toxic for insect. Nicotinoids, I don't know if you've heard of those pesticides. Those are also derived from nicotine plants, tobacco plants. So the line between, what's organic, natural, and synthetic is very blurry. It all depends on the dose. And of course, often the more effective it is, the more toxic it is too. But you can have another 10 presentations about pesticides.
Well, yeah, I think pesticides get blamed for a lot of things when maybe they're not as big a problem as sometimes they're made out to be.
Well, the concern is the same as with, for example, microplastics. We know we all have these pesticides in our body,
Correct.
and we don't know exactly what's going on. We also know that men are getting less fertile. It's just the lines are sort of, they're sort of following each other. So there's a lot of things we don't know, and we still allow this, and we still allow these things to be put on our lawns more and more because the numbers are still growing. So yeah, I don't know. I don't feel safe with that, and especially not safe for our biodiversity, and not safe for your bees either.
Yeah, well, that's why I'm here, because I'm concerned about that, and that's what I'm curious about.
Yeah.
Is because it's a serious problem within the bee population for sure.
Yeah.
But I have not been able in my research to really pinpoint down just how much is actually being used. A lot of people say, "Oh my God, pesticides, pesticides, pesticides." But when I look at the
Oh, I can tell
numbers,
you
and
this.
I don't.
Yeah.
Who is the applicator? What are they applying it for? And what is the actual toxin, or what is the chemical
Yeah.
that's being used? And
That's-
I can't get to that
That's
information.
very good. So again, Cornell and the DEC. I've been in the warehouse of Save a Tree, and I was stunned by the amount of, products.
Yeah, but specifically, what were they using? That's
Yeah,
what I'd like to know.
That's incredibly complicated. They have something for so many things. Most of our pesticides come from the petrochemical industry, and they make new variations of pesticides all the time. But again, salt, for example, if you use salt is toxic, but then a little bit
Right.
vinegar, he mentioned vinegar. It kills a plant, but it doesn't do us any harm. So yeah, it's a very complicated
See,
issue.
from my perspective, even I think like your comment earlier about nighttime lighting, that's a topic that gets no attention, but I think it's probably having more of a detrimental effect than some other things that get a lot of attention.
Yeah.
And even with the bees. So for what it's worth. But I'm
Yeah.
hogging the mic, so let me give it to somebody.
I just wanted to add, DJ, I think you were on the same Master Gardener class as I was all those years ago. I remember them telling us with regard to herbicides and pesticides that it actually isn't the professionals that are doing all the damage, it's the homeowners who don't really read the instructions and generally apply far more chemicals to their lawns than is necessary. And you're never going to get figures on application for that. So it's
Yes. The sales are being recorded, so we know what is being sold. So we actually know, exactly what type of chemicals and how much is used. Yeah. Yeah. Roundup is huh? Yes, exactly. Yes. Well, yes.
Under a different formulation with a different toxin, a different active ingredient. And that's what becomes important. It's just what is
I totally agree.
the ingredient in the product.
I've never, and also, for example, for glyphosate, everybody is so alarmed about glyphosate. I personally have so many documentation about glyphosate, and I'm still not convinced it's dangerous.
I agree with you.
And other products, there are products out there that we're using that are really, really concerning, and we're not talking about them.
So I'll make a small comment. I live with Filippine, and this garden that she showed some pictures about, she started it about 5 years ago. And in 3 years, it completely changed from a very dull lawn to something that was zooming and full of birds and critters. And it's really amazing to see how quick this turnaround took place. So I mean, you should just go and do it because it's surprising how effective it is. It's not a joke. It's not a sales pitch. It's real, and it's fun. So
Thank you, guys. Thank you. And again, just so we have info. I mean, if you take a card, info at Healthy Yard. We love to be a help desk. So come on with your questions if you have any, tonight or tomorrow. Just contact with us. Take care, everyone. Fantastic. Yeah. Interesting enough. I